The Silva Manifesto. I named it the Silva Manifesto because this is my own personal manifesto that I'm going to be using throughout my architectural career. And it's just something that I want to kind of look back on as I'm going through my architectural career, just to see how I want to design and just have these standards that I want to have for myself. So in the realm of architecture, there are many issues that have been created in the 21st century that previous generations of architects didn't have to deal with. Architecture is about problem solving, but it's also an art form. So that means that architecture is an art form that solves problems at the same time. And while we should be able to get creative as we want, we have to address the issues that we have in our modern world. So down below, I'm going to be going over the 5 statements that I have that address both our desires as architects to create and issues that we have in our modern world. So the first is biophilic architecture and design. And so back in the 80s, a man named Edward O. Wilson came up with this theory called biophilia theory. And this essentially states that humans possess an innate tendency to seek connections with nature and other forms of life. And so architects took that theory and then applied it to architecture. So that just means that the natural environment is integrated with the built environment, because it's healthy for humans to be out in nature. We evolved to have a very close relationship with nature and not to be surrounded by drywall or concrete. So there are many benefits that people have for being in nature, such as boosting your immune system, reducing stress and anxiety, boosting your creativity, and improving your cognitive function and memory. Right, and there's many more benefits that you have for being in nature. And biophilic design isn't just about adding plants, it's a lot deeper than that. Environmental features, natural shapes and forms, natural patterns, light and shade, how it's used in a space, right? All that is included in biophilic architecture and design. The second statement is modern tools. And so with modern technology, we'd be able to, we will have new tools at our disposal. And so having these new tools, we'll be able to create new shapes and forms that are able to be designed. And with the evolution of construction and civil engineering, we're going to be able to actually manifest these new shapes and forms that we have into reality. And so I have a very unpopular opinion, but I actually really hate Renaissance architecture because it was old and it was very unoriginal. Like, they took design ideas and building construction techniques from over 1,000 years old. Like, it was nothing new, and they thought they were being creative. But I love Gothic architecture because it pushed the boundary of what was possible in architecture, and be able to push the boundary of building technology. They were actually able to create these huge spiraling structures. And then Renaissance architecture came along, and they went back to basic post and lintel structures. The third statement is public transportation. And so humans, as we've become way too dependent on using private automobiles, and so we have to be able to become less reliant on it. So as architects and designers, we have to be able to kind of design these spaces that encourages people to rely less on private automobiles, and to be able to use sidewalks more often, to use bikes more often, to use public transportation more often. So instead of just having this one street catered to just private automobiles, we have to design the space to be able to encourage all of these different ways of traffic going through. The fourth statement that I have is having mixed use areas, and having these, because when you have one specific area, such as residential areas, so concentrated into one space, it makes people use their private automobile more often because everything's so far apart that they just can't walk to it. So when you have residential areas and commercial areas a lot closer together, then it encourages them to walk more rather than having to drive to those areas that they want to go to. So we'd have residential areas and commercial areas kind of spread out throughout the land rather than just having like one concentrated in such a large part of the land. And the last statement that I have is to be able to design with culture, because it's one of the most important aspects of designing in culture. Because no matter where you go in the world now, almost all architecture is the same. The form and the building techniques are they're practically the same no matter where you go. Like in America, South America, go Europe, they're all very, very similar to each other. And so it loses like you don't see the local culture in architecture anymore, or the local geography and geology. Like they're not using it to their advantage anymore. So people lose that connection to the local place. And so architecture and design has to be able to take into account its local surroundings and the people that live there to have a stronger connection to that place, right? Making it its own unique place. Architecture and culture have a very close relationship with each other, right? The way we live affects our designs, and our designs in return affect the way that we live.